Welcome, restless dreamer. You've just stepped into the shadows of sleep, where stories whisper and the darkness listens. I'm your guide tonight, your voice in the void, here to lead you gently into nightmares wrapped in lullabies. Before we begin, press like if you're brave enough, and subscribe for more midnight tales that blur the line between sleep and terror. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what hour has found you? It's been 3 years since that night, and I still wake up drenched in sweat, gasping like I'm back down there, in the dark, underground belly of Millbrook Middle School. Back then, I was drifting through life with a communications degree no one cared about, but I lived for urban exploration. It wasn't a hobby, it was my identity. Every abandoned warehouse, derelict hospital, and forgotten church within 50 miles knew the sound of my boots. My crew? Just me, Jason, and Chloe. We'd been breaking into condemned buildings since high school. Camera in hand, flashlights charged, fueled by adrenaline and beef jerky. That August evening started like so many others. We met at the old gas station off Highway 19, stocked up on energy drinks, double-checked our gear, and headed for Millbrook Middle School. It had been closed since the early 90s and had a reputation for being gutted and boring. But Jason had heard whispers, rumors of a sealed basement that nobody had ever found. That's what brought us back. The school sat hidden under a tangle of kudzu, its red brick shell barely visible through the overgrowth. We parked behind the old gymnasium where the fence had collapsed years ago, killed the headlights, and waited for our eyes to adjust. The building loomed ahead, 3 stories of broken windows and graffiti scars. Jason took point, flashlight cutting through the dark. Chloe followed, camera already snapping. I stayed behind, watching for signs of security or squatters. The side door we'd used before was welded shut now, but we found a window where the plywood had rotted away. The moment we slipped inside, the smell hit us. Mold, decay, the heavy scent of time itself. Our beams sliced through clouds of dust that swirled like ghosts. Children's artwork still clung to the walls, sun-faded, brown-streaked remnants of innocence. We'd seen every inch of this place before, but tonight we were chasing something new. Jason pulled out his phone and showed us a blurry image from an urbex forum, a rusted metal ring in concrete, maybe part of a trap door. The post claimed it was near the old boiler room, hidden behind a wall sealed during renovations in the 80s. The boiler room was just as we remembered. Pipes like twisted intestines hung from the ceiling. But this time, Jason bypassed the furnace and headed straight to a far corner we'd always ignored. He knocked along the drywall, listening. Then, thud, hollow. His eyes lit up. We helped him tear the wall apart. Moisture had already loosened the panels, revealing a slab of concrete beneath. And there it was, the metal ring, covered in grime and rust. A real trapdoor. Jason, always prepared, produced bolt cutters from his backpack. The ancient padlock snapped after a few tense tries, echoing like a broken bone. We hesitated. The air felt different, wrong, but we were already too deep in. Chloe aimed her camera. Jason and I grabbed the ring and pulled. The trapdoor screamed as it opened. The air that escaped was thick and sickly sweet, like rotting syrup. Our flashlights revealed a narrow shaft with a ladder disappearing into blackness, 20 feet down at least. "This isn't on any of the blueprints I found," Chloe whispered. She was meticulous with her research. If she didn't know about this place, no one did. Jason tested the ladder. It groaned, but held. "I'm going down." Of course he was. I dropped a glow stick. It bounced once, then disappeared into the dark. Against every primal instinct, I followed him down. Chloe came last, camera ready. What we found at the bottom wasn't a room. It was a tunnel, a real one. It stretched out in both directions, lined with rusted pipes and decades-old electrical conduits. Abandoned janitorial carts sat along one wall, mop buckets now crusted orange, forgotten brooms decaying to splinters. But it was the air that chilled me. It wasn't just stale, it was heavy, like it didn't want us breathing it. Jason headed left. Chloe and I followed, our lights revealing more strange details. Scratch marks on the walls, a child's shoe half submerged in black water, and barricades, makeshift ones, built from desks and filing cabinets, scattered down the tunnel. "Guys," Chloe's voice trembled. "They're all facing one direction, like someone was trying to keep something from coming through." She was right. Every barricade pointed inward, toward the tunnel's depths. We climbed over them, each step echoing louder than it should. The tunnel branched off in ways that didn't match the school's footprint. Jason marked the walls with chalk, but I was already disoriented. That's when Chloe yanked my arm. Ahead, in a chamber carved out of darkness, was a body. It was slumped peacefully against the wall, knees to chest, like a child hiding during a storm. Most of the clothes had rotted away, but a name tag clung to the faded fabric. Eugene. We didn't speak, just stood there, flashlights flickering over the scene. His body had long since dried into a skeletal husk, but it was how he died that told the real story. One arm clutched a thick, decaying notebook. The other was pressed against the wall, where he had scratched something into the concrete. Jason leaned closer. They were tally marks, dozens, maybe hundreds, scratched in groups of 5, covering nearly 3 feet of wall. A calendar of his final days. Chloe gently pried the notebook from his grip. Most of it had rotted, but a few pages near the end were still legible. She read aloud. Day 1. Got locked in during summer maintenance. Door mechanism jammed. No one can hear me. Day 3. Water pipes still work. Found some crackers. Phone dead. Why did I come alone? Day 7. They're not coming. School's closed till September. I've tried everything. The door won't budge. Day 10. Heard something last night. Not alone down here. Wish I was. The last entries were shaky. Just fragments. They walk at night. I can hear them breathing. They know I'm here. God forgive me. The final page. If anyone finds this, don't come down here after dark. The school sealed this place for a reason. After that, just drawings. Eyes. Hundreds of eyes. We stood in silence, flashlights shaking in our hands. Everything made a horrible kind of sense. The sealed trap door, the missing records, the barricades. Eugene hadn't been sealed in by accident. The school locked him down here, with something. And rather than face it, they erased the basement from memory. Jason wanted to keep exploring, to see how far the tunnels went. But Chloe and I shut it down. We'd found enough. More than enough. We climbed back up the ladder, back through the stale air, past the barricades that now felt more like warnings than obstacles. When we reached the surface, Jason pulled out a fresh padlock and sealed the trap door behind us. We never spoke about it, never posted the photos. We just left. The school was demolished a few years later. A strip mall stands there now. Sometimes I wonder if the construction crews ever found that tunnel. If they listened to the warnings in that notebook, if they left it buried. But on quiet nights, when the air is still, I remember the look of that notebook, the tally marks, and the sound the ladder made as I climbed down, wet metal, in a sealed tunnel, untouched for decades. The rungs should have been dry. Something else was still down there. Rural Illinois is full of ghosts, not the kind that rattle chains or whisper through the walls, but the quieter kind, the kind left behind in peeling wallpaper, sun-faded family photos, and empty shoes still by the front door. I'd spent years chasing them through my camera lens. Most weekends, Kevin and I loaded up his old Ford pickup with gear and coffee thermoses, heading out into the fields to photograph the forgotten, old churches swallowed by vines, collapsed barns, and homes where whole families seemed to have vanished mid-sentence. I shot weddings to pay the bills, but this, capturing decay before it disappeared, was my real work. Kevin, a graphic designer by day, had the same itch for lost things. That July morning had the kind of light photographers dream about. Warm, directional, clear. The sky was a sheet of untouched blue. We'd gotten a tip from an antique dealer about a farmhouse off County Road 11. Said it had been empty since the early 90s. No one had touched it in decades. No real estate signs, no break-ins, like it had been sealed off and quietly forgotten. The drive took us 20 minutes past the last gas station, past tidy fields and cracked blacktop, until the road became more gravel than pavement. The house sat 100 yards back from the road, barely visible behind a curtain of overgrown corn and young saplings. Kevin parked near a rusted mailbox leaning at an angle. The nameplate read, Garrison. The house didn't look haunted, just tired. 2-story white paint shedding in flakes, porch sagging on one side. Curtains still hung behind the windows, thin, tattered, moving slightly in the breeze. The front door was already open an inch. Not unusual. Time opens most doors eventually. Inside, the air changed. Still, thick. Not death, not yet, but damp paper, mildew, and the stale hush of places that haven't been disturbed in a long time. It felt like the house was holding its breath. The living room was almost theatrical in its stillness. Furniture sat where it had been left. Floral sofa, recliner with a crocheted throw, boxy TV frozen in time. Dust coated everything in soft gray. Family photos lined the mantel, but the faces had blurred, warped by moisture, curling at the corners. Kevin went wide, capturing the room in context. I focused on the intimacy. A yellowed newspaper on the coffee table, a coffee mug with lipstick stains, a pair of reading glasses resting beside a remote. Then we moved to the kitchen. It was different. The stillness gave way to something hurried, interrupted. Drawers open, dishes scattered. A pot still on the stove, crusted with something blackened and long dead. The refrigerator stood ajar, mercifully empty but still haunted by the ghosts of old labels and a few desiccated condiment bottles. On the kitchen table sat a pile of unopened mail, postmarked November 1993. Birthday cards, utility bills, catalogs, all addressed to the Garrison family, all waiting for hands that would never come. Upstairs, the house got stranger. The hallway was longer than it should have been for a place this size. 4 doors stretched down it, all closed except one. Sunlight slanted in through a cracked window, illuminating motes of dust that hung in the air like ash. Every step released a groan from the floorboards. The 3rd door opened into the parents' bedroom. The quilt on the queen bed had been pulled back neatly, like someone had just risen. Drawers left partially open revealed stacks of clothes, folded but disordered. Kevin found a wallet in one. Robert Garrison, the license read. Born 1950. Heavy-set man, thick mustache, soft eyes. We returned it exactly where we found it. Then we reached the room at the end of the hall. The door was covered in old stickers. Dinosaurs, rockets, glittery stars. Puffy, faded, still clinging after all these years. Inside, time had stopped. A child's bedroom, small bed with Ninja Turtle sheets, action figures lined on the shelves, school papers pinned to a corkboard, handwriting careful and large. Timothy Garrison, age 8. A calendar on the wall read, November 1993. A dentist appointment circled on the 12th in blue marker. The 12th had never been crossed out. The closet was full. Clothes organized by size, shoes lined up beneath them, and in the corner a baseball glove cradled a ball, like someone had just come back from a game of catch. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. The silence in that room was loud enough. This wasn't a place someone had forgotten. This was a place someone had preserved. Back in the hallway, Kevin noticed something we hadn't seen before. A door, flush with the wall, painted the same yellow as the trim. A basement door. The paint was newer. The doorknob, too. A deadbolt had been installed above it. Odd for an interior door. We opened it. The staircase was solid, reinforced. A new handrail ran along the wall. Most basements creaked and groaned under your feet. This one felt prepared. The basement smelled of concrete, dust, and something else. Faint, chemical. The fluorescent lights overhead were long dead, so we used our flashlights. The front half was typical. Boxes of holiday decorations, covered furniture, old suitcases. But in the back, the concrete changed. Newer, smoother. A small room had been constructed there. Drywall thrown up quick and cheap. The door was padlocked, but the wood around the latch was swollen and soft. Kevin gave it a tug. The lock came loose with a splintery crack. The smell inside hit first. Earthy, rotting, laced with something synthetic, like ammonia and old pennies. The room was small, maybe 10 by 10 feet. A single workbench pushed against the wall, stained dark in places. Above it, the drywall had marks, scratches, deep and clustered like someone had been carving tally marks. Kevin shined his light down. "Look," he said. In the corner, the floorboards didn't match. Cut clean, fitted back sloppily. We hesitated. Then Kevin pulled out his knife and pried up the first board. The space underneath was shallow. Dirt, torn cloth, something soft and red-brown. At first we thought it was rags. Then I saw the shoe, a child's sneaker, small, with faded cartoons and a cracked heel light, wrapped in what had once been a blanket, and next to it, white against the dark cloth, bones, small ones, a hand, fingers curled like they were holding something invisible. Kevin backed away, stumbling into the bench. That's when we saw what was taped beneath it. Photographs, dozens of them, yellowed with age, all of the same boy, Timothy. But these weren't family portraits. These were distant, from across the street, behind trees, through windows, watching, waiting. One photo showed him playing in the yard, another walking to school, the backpack too large for his frame, and the last getting into a car, smiling, trusting. We didn't talk. We didn't breathe. We just left everything the way we found it and got out. Back upstairs, the house felt smaller, pressed in, like the air had thickened, every shadow hiding breath or movement. Every step creaked louder. We didn't even pack our gear, just grabbed what we could and moved. In the kitchen, Kevin stopped me. The calendar by the phone still read November 1993, but this one was different. The dates from the 10th through the 14th were circled in red. Vacation was scrawled across them. But the 12th, the day of Timothy's dentist appointment, was crossed out in thick, angry red. We didn't speak again until we were outside. The sun, once so perfect, now felt harsh and sterile. We threw our gear in the truck. Kevin turned the key. The engine didn't start. Again and again. Just the clicking of a dying battery. Then, from the house, slam. A door. Not wind, not pressure. A deliberate sound. Another slam. Closer. Kevin turned the key again, and the truck finally roared to life. We tore out of there, gravel flying, never looking back. At the main road, we stopped. Kevin called the police. He told them everything. 2 deputies met us at the house. We stayed in the truck, watched as more cruisers arrived. Yellow tape, flashing lights. The whole place turned into a crime scene. They found more than Timothy. 2 more children buried in that shallow space beneath the basement floor. No names, no records. The investigation hit national news. Robert Garrison had vanished the same night as Timothy. His wife, Patricia, claimed he took their son and disappeared. She filed the missing persons report, stuck to the story for years. Then one day she vanished too. They found her living in Florida under her maiden name. She confessed. She'd discovered what her husband had done. Instead of reporting him, she'd helped cover it up. Let the town believe their son had been abducted. She stayed in that house for years, keeping Timothy's room pristine, as if he might walk through the door. The night she left, she poisoned Robert and buried him in the cornfield behind the house. Authorities found his remains right where she said. Patricia was sentenced to life. She never revealed who the other children were. Kevin stopped exploring after that. He sells insurance now, has a wife, 2 kids, a normal life. I still take photos, but only the good kind. Weddings, birthdays, things that mark beginnings instead of endings. Still, sometimes I dream about that house, about Timothy's room, the sunlight through the curtains, the calendar, And I wonder how many mornings Patricia stood at that door, straightening the bed sheets, smoothing the posters on the wall, knowing what was buried just feet beneath her. They said she checked the basement room regularly, kept the board secure, said she couldn't bear the thought of him being alone in the dark. Last Thursday shattered something in me. I'm a freelance photographer based in Michigan. For the past 6 months, I'd been working on a personal project, documenting forgotten industrial spaces. You know how some people collect records or vintage toys? I collect ghosts. Ghosts of steel, glass, and rust. Factories, warehouses, places time walked away from. I thought I'd seen it all. Rusted machinery, broken skylights, graffiti from decades past. But nothing prepared me for what I found at the old Grandview meat processing facility. It sat about 30 miles outside the city. A fellow urbex photographer on Instagram tipped me off, said it had been closed down since 2003 after some financial scandal. Perfect for my series. I arrived around 4 p.m., parked my beat-up Subaru behind a cluster of trees, out of sight from the road. The sun cast long shadows across the crumbling parking lot. Weeds had cracked through the asphalt like veins, and the entrance doors were stuck wide open, like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Then came the smell. Not rot exactly, more like chemical rot. Old bleach mixed with rust. Industrial death. I adjusted my camera, double-checked my flashlight, and stepped inside. The main processing floor stretched out like a forgotten aircraft hangar. Silent, massive, empty except for the skeletal remains of conveyor belts and meat hooks that dangled from rusted tracks overhead. My boots echoed with each step, the sound bouncing off walls in strange, warped delays. I started shooting, capturing rust patterns that looked eerily like dried blood under the broken skylight beams. That's when I saw them. A row of heavy metal doors at the back of the facility. Cold storage, standard for meatpacking. But something made me stop. Each door had a padlock, not old ones, new shiny padlocks that didn't belong in a place abandoned for 20 years. 3 doors were locked tight. The 4th, the lock hung open, dangling like someone had just walked away from it. I hesitated, then pushed the door open with my shoulder. The hinges groaned like something alive. The air inside dropped 20 degrees. Concrete walls, no windows. Just a small 10 by 10 room, and something worse than cold. Scratches, deep gouges in the walls, starting about 4 feet up and dragging upward, 5 feet 6. Not random graffiti or age marks. These were desperate, long, repetitive, angry, bloody. I swept my flashlight across the room. There were hundreds of marks, some dark with what looked like dried blood. In the far corner was a moldy mattress, crusted with stains. Around it, empty generic food cans, beans, soup, canned fruit, faded but readable. And next to it, the worst thing I've ever seen, a heavy chain, bolted directly into the concrete floor. At the end of it, a shackle, thick enough for a wrist or an ankle. The metal was worn smooth, like it had been used too many times. I backed out so fast I nearly dropped my flashlight. Every part of me screamed, "Run, just get out." But I didn't. Maybe it was shock. Maybe some stubborn part of my brain still saw it as just a shoot. So I checked the next room. Same setup. Scratched walls, stained mattress, food cans, another chain, and something else, a notebook tucked under the mattress. It was water damaged, falling apart. Most pages were ruined, but a few were readable. Scrawled dates from 2009. Desperate notes. I just need to get clean. I swear I'll pay them back. I just need a few more days. Then nothing. No ending. No resolution. I snapped photos, my hands trembling. This wasn't an abandoned factory anymore. It was a prison. I turned to leave, and that's when I heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. Not the creaks of an old building. Someone was walking. Then a sound that made my blood freeze. Humming. Soft. Off-key. like someone humming a lullaby to themselves, coming from the loading dock. I turned off my flashlight, pressed my back against the cold wall, barely breathing. The footsteps grew louder. The humming got closer. I had to move. I darted through a side door, into what used to be an office wing. Desks overturned, filing cabinets rusted into place, but down the center of the hallway, a clean path through the dust. Someone had been walking through here, often. I followed it, quietly, until I found a window. I could see my car through the grime, just a few hundred feet away. It was painted shut. Panic flared. I grabbed a letter opener from one of the desks and started scraping the edges, peeling back layers of paint. Every scrape echoed like a gunshot. Behind me, I heard a door open. The humming had stopped. The silence was louder than any noise. With one final crack, the window gave. I shoved it open, scraped my arms, squeezing through, and dropped to the ground. Then I ran. Not a jog, not a let's get out of here pace. I ran like the air itself was trying to swallow me. Through weeds, past thorns tearing at my jeans, my camera banging against my hip, shouts behind me, more than one voice. I didn't look back. I reached the car, fumbled the keys, heart pounding in my throat. Got inside, slammed the door. The engine started on the first try. I floored it, tires screeching, gravel spraying behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw two figures step out from the loading dock, watching. I didn't stop until I hit the highway. Even then, I kept checking my mirrors. I went straight to the police station, bleeding, shaking, barely able to speak. At first, the desk sergeant gave me the another crazy explorer look until I showed him the photos. An hour later, I was giving a full statement to two detectives. One of them, Brennan, told me something I still haven't fully processed. The place had been on their radar for years. Reports of missing people, mostly addicts or unhoused folks who owed money to the wrong people. Grand View had become a holding site, a detention center for a human trafficking operation. People were chained in those cold rooms, held for ransom, worked to pay off debts. Some didn't survive. That night, the police raided the facility. They arrested 3 men, low-level muscle guarding the place. Brennan said they'd found evidence of at least 12 people who'd been held there. Some had been moved, some had been released, others still unaccounted for. The notebook I found helped identify a woman named Carla. She'd gone missing in 2014. Her family had been searching for her for nearly a decade. They never found her body, but at least now they had answers. Brennan thanked me for coming forward, said my photos helped build the case. Then he looked me in the eye and said, "If you hadn't gotten out when you did, you might have ended up in one of those rooms." It's been a week. I haven't touched my camera since. My friends in the photography community think I'm being dramatic, but they didn't see the chains. They didn't hear the humming. They didn't stand in a room that smelled like bleach, blood, and hopelessness. Urban exploration was supposed to be about beauty and decay, but now I know. Some places are abandoned for a reason, and sometimes the things that left those places behind are still inside, waiting. My cousin Jeremy showed up at my apartment a few weeks before everything went wrong. His left arm was in a sling, and a raw gash stretched across his forehead, still red and puffy like it hadn't fully closed. He'd always been the fearless one, the kind of guy who'd climb radio towers for fun or sneak into abandoned buildings on a dare. But that day in early June, he looked nothing like himself. Quiet, pale, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. I was folding laundry in my cramped studio when he knocked. I opened the door, half expecting some stupid prank, but he didn't even say hello. He just looked at me, like really looked at me, and said, "Don't go to Riverside Community Hospital, especially not the psychiatric wing on the 4th floor." I laughed at first. He was always dramatic, and ever since he and his college friends had started sneaking into derelict buildings, he'd been full of creepy stories. Photos of graffitied hallways and rusted medical equipment filled his Facebook page. But this wasn't one of his usual tales. Jeremy didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He sat on my couch and told me what happened. 2 nights earlier, he and his friends had broken into the hospital through a shattered basement window. The place had been shut down for years after some scandal, something about fraud and patient mistreatment. Most of the building was what you'd expect. Moldy walls, busted tiles, the smell of rot. But when they reached the psychiatric wing, it was different. Some rooms still had power. Fluorescent lights flickered in unnatural rhythms. The air felt heavy. Files littered the nurse's station, real patient records. Pages and pages of old charts, like someone had been reading through them. But what really got to them was the elevator. They heard it. Not just a groan of cables or some distant creak. The chime. The actual ding of an arriving elevator. Jeremy said they froze, straining to hear. The machinery inside the shaft shifted, groaned, moved. It stopped, then started again, as if it were taking someone somewhere. That's when Brandon panicked. He ran toward the stairwell, moving fast, too fast. A rotted step gave way, and he dropped straight down a story and a half, landing on a pile of rusted gurneys, broken ribs, punctured lung. He was lucky, the paramedics said. Jeremy swore it wasn't just the fall that scared them. It was what they felt, like they were being watched, followed. I should have listened. Weeks passed. Then one night I was in my friend Megan's car, parked behind the overgrown lot behind Riverside. With us were Anthony, loud, cocky, always up for something reckless, and Veronica, a girl Megan had recently met at community college. We were bored, and Anthony couldn't shut up about how his brother used to party in the abandoned hospital. Megan was into it immediately. Veronica claimed she'd explored old asylums back in Ohio. I tried to explain what Jeremy told me. The fall, the elevator, the warning. But Anthony just waved it off. Your cousin's trying to keep the place for himself. It was too late. We were already crawling through that same broken window. Inside it smelled like mildew, rust, and something sweet, but wrong, like rotten peaches soaked in bleach. Our phone flashlights barely pierced the gloom. Hallways stretched in every direction, paper signs hanging limp from door frames. We passed radiology, administration, the cafeteria, all empty. When we reached the 4th floor, a wave of dread hit me. The sign above the double doors said, "Psychiatric Wing," just like Jeremy said. The doors were jammed open with a wooden chair, and beyond them, a green glow flickered in the dark. Anthony was the first to step through. Holy crap, there's actually power. He grinned and disappeared into the wing. Megan followed. Veronica hesitated, gave me a nervous smile, and went in after them. I stood alone for a moment, staring into that flickering green light. My skin prickled. Then I stepped forward. Inside, the air felt colder. The walls were painted a sickly yellow, faded and peeling. Some of the lights worked. Others blinked sporadically, casting shadows that moved when no one did. The floor was a sea of paperwork, charts, medication logs, intake forms. I picked one up. A patient who claimed bugs were crawling under her skin. Her medication had been discontinued due to budget cuts. Date stamped 1995. The nurse's station sat in the middle of the wing like a crumbling altar. We fanned out. Megan opened a drawer filled with labeled keys. Anthony found a medicine cabinet with vials still inside. Veronica took pictures of everything. I kept checking the hallway. There were 3. One led to what looked like patient rooms, one to a common area, and one ended in a set of elevator doors. They were clean, too clean, like someone had wiped them down. The up arrow above them was dark, but I couldn't stop staring. Anthony disappeared down the hallway toward the patient rooms. A minute later, he called out, "Hey guys, you need to see this. We found him in room 417. Unlike the others, this one was spotless. The bed was made, sheets crisp, a glass of water on the nightstand, beads of condensation on the surface. Beside it, a stack of books, untouched. Dozens of photos covered the far wall, showing the same woman from childhood to old age. The room was lived in. Then we heard it. Ding. The elevator. We turned as one. The up arrow glowed orange. Seconds passed. The hum of cables. The metallic rumble. The doors opened. No footsteps. No voices. Just the sound of breathing. Slow, wet, labored breathing. We ran. Veronica screamed. Megan grabbed my wrist and pulled. Anthony nearly knocked me down trying to get past. We sprinted through the wing, over the papers, past the nurse's station, through the propped open doors. Behind us, another chime echoed. The elevator was moving again. We found a different stairwell, one Jeremy hadn't mentioned, and hurtled down it. None of us spoke until we collapsed outside by Megan's car, gasping. Her hand shook as she fumbled the keys. As we peeled away, I looked back. On the fourth floor, the windows began to glow, one by one, lights turning on in sequence, like someone was walking the hallway. We didn't tell the police. What would we say? But I couldn't let it go. I spent the next 2 days digging into Riverside's history. Records showed power had been disconnected over 10 years ago. All utilities, cut, official, final. And then I found her. Eleanor Voss. She died in room 417. Severe dementia. Spent the last 23 years of her life at Riverside. When she passed, no one noticed for 3 days. Staff had missed her during rounds. Her body was found by a janitor. The article showed a photo, the same woman from the wall. I visited Brandon in the hospital, dragging Jeremy with me. Brandon looked pale, but alert. When I told him about Eleanor, his face drained of color. When I fell, he said, I landed in record storage. There were files everywhere, death certificates, dozens of them, all from the psychiatric wing, all listed natural causes. But all the patients were found days after death. Riverside had been systematically neglecting the people in that wing. Brandon had pocketed one certificate while waiting for the ambulance. He still had it. Eleanor Voss wasn't the only one. She was one of 17. A few months later, the city announced plans to demolish the hospital, citing structural instability. I have no proof, but I think Jeremy tipped them off. I drove by the day the psychiatric wing came down, watched from across the street. When the wrecking ball hit the 4th floor, the crew paused. I heard later, through Anthony's brother, that they'd found room 417 sealed from the inside, welded shut. Inside, everything was intact. The bed, the water, the photos. There were also stacks of bills, water, electric, groceries, all addressed to Eleanor Voss, all dated after her death. The demolition continued. Now Riverside is gone. Just a parking lot remains. Sometimes I drive past. I never stop. I don't even slow down. October in Nebraska bites. It doesn't nudge or nip. It burrows. The kind of cold that settles under your clothes and into your bones no matter how many layers you wear. I'd worked as a property assessor for Douglas County going on 8 years. My specialty? Abandoned buildings, crumbling farmhouses, rusted gas stations, failed restaurants, each a grave marker to someone's forgotten dream. But Fairview Animal Hospital wasn't like the others. Dr. Nathaniel Brooks had run the place for years until the state revoked his license. The news reports called it disturbing irregularities in animal care, but nobody ever spelled out what that meant. Farmers just stopped coming. The place closed down shortly after, quietly, without notice. That Tuesday morning, I pulled into the cracked lot in my Jeep Cherokee. Tires crunching frost-laced gravel. Weeds pierced through the pavement like bone fingers, waving slightly in the wind. The building hunched against the gray sky, a single-story brick shell with sun-bleached blue trim. Every window was boarded up, and the air smelled wrong, sweet and sick. Even from outside, it clung to the back of my throat like rot wrapped in sugar. I grabbed my clipboard, flashlight, and camera. My checklist had the usual 3,400 square feet, built in 1971, zoned commercial. What it didn't mention was that the front door was half open, the lock torn clean out like someone had pried it with a crowbar. The place was supposed to be secured by the bank. Inside, my flashlight cut through dust-heavy air. The reception area looked frozen in time. A rack of yellowed magazines sat untouched. A grinning golden retriever on the May 2006 calendar beamed at me from the wall. Then I noticed the desk. Rows and rows of pet collars, dozens, laid out in perfect symmetry. Each one labeled in shaky, uneven handwriting. Whiskers, Duke, Princess, Beans. The ink looked fresh, not months old, maybe days. Every collar was polished, cleaned, metal tags gleaming in the dim light. My stomach turned, but my job was to document. I took photos, hands slightly unsteady. The hallway beyond reception stretched in a gentle curve. Exam rooms lined both sides, their doors ajar. I stepped into the first. Dust-covered counters. An empty gurney. Nothing unusual, except for that god-awful smell. Stronger here. Sweet, sickly, and under it all, a tang of bleach. It was in the third room that I heard it. A humming, low, almost musical. A lullaby sung off-key, drifting up from deeper within the clinic. Not mechanical. Human. My instincts prickled. Could be a squatter. Maybe someone desperate for shelter. I should have turned around. Called it in. Instead, I called out, "Hello? I'm with the county assessor's office. This building's not safe. I can help you find somewhere else to stay." The humming stopped. Silence then. Shuffling. Something heavy being dragged. Then a voice so thin and cracked it barely sounded human. "They're sleeping. Please don't wake them. They need rest. After surgery." My breath caught. I moved forward anyway, down the curved hallway toward the back of the building, where the blueprint said the kennel and surgical suite were located. The door to the kennel room stood ajar. The smell hit me like a wall. Rot, disinfectant, mold. My eyes watered. I hesitated at the threshold, bile rising in my throat. Inside were cages, stacked floor to ceiling, some open, some closed. The closed ones weren't empty. Each held a shape, bundles wrapped in gauze, cloth, and duct tape, about the size of cats or small dogs, each with a name card taped to the bars and a full water bowl beside it. Something moved in the corner. A man hunched beside one of the cages, gently placing a scoop of kibble into a bowl next to a wrapped bundle. His lab coat was stained, old blood, some fresh. His hair stuck out in tufts, and his skin looked yellowed, stretched tight over sunken cheeks. He turned to me slowly, eyes bloodshot, pupils blown wide, and he smiled. That smile, that's what still shows up in my dreams. Not the cages, not the smell, the smile. Pure joy, like a grandfather welcoming his grandchild. "Oh, you're the assistant, aren't you? Dr. Brooks said someone would come eventually." His voice wavered with glee. "I've kept everything going. Feeding times, cleanings, medication. Though, they've been tired lately. The surgeries take so much out of them." He stood, reaching into his coat. I stepped back, bracing myself. "I need to show you their charts," he said. "Each one has dietary needs." He pulled out a handful of crumpled notebook pages, covered in dense, looping scrawls. Nonsensical dosages, dates from the future, drugs I'd never heard of. I tried to keep my voice steady. "I'm not a vet assistant. I'm just assessing the building. Maybe we can talk outside." His face shifted. The smile evaporated, leaving only ruin. He stared, wide-eyed. "No, you're one of them, aren't you? The ones who want to take my patients away." He lunged. His fingers were cracked, yellowed, but strong. He gripped my wrist like a vice. "You can't have them. I promised Dr. Brooks. I promised I'd keep them safe." I twisted free and stumbled back into the hallway. He followed, shouting, his voice rising into panic. 16 years. I've kept the schedule. I've fed them. I've cleaned them." Buttons meows when I sing to him. Mr. Fitzgerald wags his tail during bath time. His voice shattered into a scream. I ran. I didn't look back. My boots slipped on grime and broken tile. My flashlight swung wildly, shadows dancing across the filthy walls. I ducked into the surgery suite, looking for an exit. That's when I saw it. The operating table. A bundle half unwrapped. What lay inside? I can't describe it. Fur. Bone. Something human adjacent stitched into the wrong shape. Limbs that didn't match. Tubes that led nowhere. A thing stuck in limbo between species and death. I slammed through the rear fire door. The rusted push bar gave way, alarm silent. I tumbled into the overgrown lot, brambles ripping my jacket. I didn't stop, not until I reached my Jeep, not until the engine roared and my hands shook on the wheel. In the rearview mirror, I saw him, standing in the fire exit's glow, rocking one of those bundles like a child. His voice floated after me, broken and hollow. Please, don't tell them. They'll take my babies away. I'm all they have left. I called the sheriff's department from the road, barely forming the words. They dispatched a team immediately. They found him where I left him. His name was Walter Hutchkins, a former veterinary technician who vanished the year Fairview closed. Forensics later confirmed what those bundles were. Pets that had died under Dr. Brooks's care. Walter had stolen them from the evidence freezer, preserved them, kept them, fed them. He's in a psychiatric facility now. I heard he still asks about his animals every day, still worried who's feeding them. I left my job 2 weeks later. Some buildings don't need to be assessed. They need to be burned to the ground.